Hello, students. In the SYBA class for the extra credit, we have kept one important topic for your study, that is Introduction to Geoinformatics. In short, it is called as GIS. So, today in this lecture, we are going to study some important aspects of GIS. The topic of today's lecture is application of GIS. Myself, Dr. Rajendra Gunjal, Department of Geography, KTHM College. So let us study what are the applications of GIS. The subtopic of today's lecture is application of GIS in natural resource management. Students, we know that GIS is computer-based system which is widely used in many branches of sciences, including geography, geology, then environmental science, and many other sciences. In geography, the application of GIS or Geographic Information System is very, very important because geography deals with the study of locations mainly. And geography is also the study of distribution of different natural resources. And therefore, on the ground, we cannot make the correct maps or cannot identify different natural resources and their uh, status. But GIS is very helpful technique through which we can retrieve very correct and update information about different types of natural resources. And in addition to that, GIS is also helpful to find out the changes in the natural resource management, and therefore GIS is very useful topic. So let us study the applications of GIS in today's lecture. Now, the topic of today's lecture is application of GIS in natural resource management. Students, we know that GIS is widely used in different types of subjects or in different aspects. But in natural resource management, the application of GIS is very, very essential and very important. There are several types of natural resources on the earth. For example, there are forests, there are uh, mineral resources, there are water bodies, there are different types of biological resources. Then uh, oceans are there, rivers are there, tanks are there, and to identify these natural resources and to make the correct maps of these natural resources and to detect the changes which happened in the these natural resources, GIS is very, very useful. Now, before going to study the application of GIS in natural resource management, we should know what are the natural resources. Natural resources are the resources which are given by the nature, which are given by the environment, which are not man-made. For example, forest, then soil resources, then water resources, and different types of biological communities. Now, in the previous lecture, we have already studied about the introduction and concepts or the components of GIS. So, in the previous lecture, we have taken information about the meaning and definition of GIS, and at the same time, we have also taken information about the components of GIS. So you are well aware about the concept of GIS. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to study about the application of GIS in natural resource management. So natural resources are different and their management is important. What do you mean by management? Management, it means wise use of these resources without disturbing their natural setup. How can we use these natural resources wisely, and how can we use these natural resources keeping their sustainable development? So let us study about the natural resource management and application of GIS. Now, today's learning objective is application of GIS in land use. So land use, it means we know that there is 29% surface of the earth which is covered by the land, and very great amount of surface of the earth is covered by water bodies. That is 71%. So, how this land is occupied by different resources, that is called as land use. Some land is used for agriculture, some land is used for industries, some land is used for communication modes, roads, railways, etc. Some land is used for settlements. So, to keep the watch on the use of land, we can use GIS techniques. Then, GIS is very essential and very useful to find out the conditions or the status of forest. We know that environmentally, nearly one third part of the surface of the earth should be covered by forest for the sustainable development of the environment. And therefore, forest management is a big challenge in front of human society, especially in the countries like India or South Asian countries where population is very great, very large population size is there. So forests are depleting, and therefore in the forest management we can use very effectively GIS technique. After that, GIS is also used for the development of the biodiversity. Biodiversity, that means the symbiotic association of different types of animals, plants, marine animals, as well as microorganisms, and uh, all these species which are found on the earth. So, to keep biodiversity alive and developing, we can use GIS technique. After that, watershed management is very important aspect. Water is quite essential and it is a basic need of human being. And therefore, for the watershed management, to store the water in the tanks or in the dams, to keep these water resources uh, away from the pollutions, and to find out their present status, GIS is very, very important. After that, GIS can be used for the disaster management. Now, disaster is what? Disasters are of two types. Some disasters are human disasters, which are invited or which are created by human being. For example, war or riots. These are the human disasters. Uh, but there are several types of natural disasters, such as floods. For example, if there is very heavy rainfall in short period of time, the rivers get flooded. Very great amount of area of the settlements or cities or towns get submerged underwater. So that is called as flood. Similarly, on the other hand, there are famines or droughts. When there is very less amount of rainfall, we have to face the droughts. Then tsunamis are there. When the earthquakes happen on the ocean floor, the tsunami waves are generated, which is a great disaster. Then cyclones are there. So such types of disasters are very common on the earth's surface. And therefore, to protect the human society from the disasters, or uh, to minimize their uh, the nature of the disaster, we can wisely use GIS techniques. So these are some subtopics or the learning objectives of today's lecture. So let us see one by one. GIS is mainly used for mapping processes. Though GIS is a modern technique, but it is mainly used for mapping of the surface of the earth. By using these modern techniques, we can create 3D maps of the earth's surface, and therefore we can get a very clear and very real information about the land surface. And therefore, in different types of managements, we can use these maps. GIS is a computer based information system that is aimed for. So, what are the aims of GIS? The aims of GIS are collecting of the data, collection of the data. So, it can be used for collection of the data. Then, it can be used for storing the data, storage of the data. GIS gives us a large size of data, and therefore, we have to store this data for the future purposes. Then GIS is a computer-based information system which is used for collecting, storing, and manipulating data, as well as we have to analyze this data for the formation of different types of maps. Then it is used for organizing, then managing and summarizing, and after that, displaying all this data. So this is the uh, main objective of GIS. Then the integrated use of this remotely sensed data, GPS and GIS, is a potential tool to study change in land use. So this data can be used to find out or to detect what are the changes taking place in the land use. Then this data is also used for uh, noting the changes in the forest density. So we know that with the growing population, forests are depleting, their density becoming less and less. And therefore, to detect the density in the forest, we can use GIS. Then, for the coastal morphology, GIS is used because many a times these places are away from the towns or they are remote, and therefore GIS can prepare a very correct maps, real-time maps of the coastal morphology, and therefore that is used for planning purposes. Then it is also used for biodiversity to find out what is the status of the biodiversity. GIS is used. So GIS is widely used in different types of aspects. Then let us see what are the application of GIS in water resource management. As I noted earlier, GIS is very useful in the different management, especially in the water resource management. Water is an essential need, basic need of human being, and day by day, the water resources are getting pollution. So different types of pollutions are entered in the water bodies, and therefore water resources are depleting due to industrialization. A very great amount of sewage or industrial waste, it is disposed directly into the rivers or into the channels or into the streams, and finally all this waste material get merged or get discharged into the water bodies, and therefore water bodies are becoming toxic, and it having great impact on the human health and the health of all biodiversity. And therefore, to keep the water resources clean, we have to find out the sources of the pollution. In that, GIS is very, very helpful. So, in the application of water resources management, water, we know that it is an essential uh, resource. The availability of fresh water is less, it is limited, and therefore we have to preserve these water bodies. And for that, these GIS is very useful. Then, using satellite data and GIS, water resources like rivers and lakes and dams and reservoirs can be mapped in 3D. So, on the ground, we can just make the 2D maps of the water resources, but GIS goes ahead of that, and GIS prepare 3D maps which are very, very useful for the protection of water resources. Then, application of GIS in water quality monitoring. Not only the storage or the amount or the volume of water is required or essential, but the quality of water is very important. Due to increasing pollution, due to urbanization, due to industrialization, water resources are becoming polluted. And therefore, the quality of water is getting deteriorated. And therefore, GIS techniques can be used to monitor what is the quality of the water, what amount of suspended sediment is found in the water, then what is the turbidity, that is, what is the amount of soil particles or sand particles in the water, if the chlorophylls are found in the water resources, and what is the temperature of the water, that can also remotely checked due to the GIS. So GIS is very important. Temporal information of water resources is available due to GIS, because GIS is constantly taking the photographs or the maps of the resources, and therefore we can note the change in the resources. GIS is very useful for water quality monitoring. Then, what is the use of GIS in the disaster management? As I stated earlier, several disasters frequently visit the earth, such as floods or droughts or cyclones or forest fires and tsunamis, landslides. Recently in India, in several parts of North India in the Himalayan region, we have threat of landslides. Recent landslides also took several lives in the Himalayan region, and therefore, uh, to monitor the changes on the mountain slopes, GIS is very useful. Especially in rainy season, there is threat of landslides. So all these disasters are very, very deadly, and therefore, to check this disaster, to check the frequency of the disaster, or to check the threats of the disaster, we can wisely use GIS techniques. Then, what is the current? What are the current issues? To find out the current issues, GIS is used. GIS is a natural resource in natural resource management. Also addresses the current problems which are facing to the earth. Now, what is the burning issue in front of human society today? So, very crucial and burning issue, which is uh, which we are facing today, that is the climate change. Previously or in the past, it is called as global warming. If they thought that the temperature of the lower atmosphere is constantly increasing, but it is found that at some places the temperature of the lower atmosphere is also decreasing, and therefore that global warming term has been replaced by climate change. This climate change is very important issue which we are facing today. And therefore, to see what is the status of climate change in different parts of the earth, we can use this GIS technique. Then habitat loss, that is a very important issue. Habitat loss, it means the earth is not only for the human beings. There are animals, there are plants, there are microorganisms, there are birds, and they required a natural habitat. But due to growing population, the habitats are uh, we have encroached in their habitats, and therefore the size of natural habitat is decreasing. And therefore, to notice the habitats of the this biodiversity, we have to use GIS techniques. Then population growth and pollution, these are also burning issues. And therefore, to see where the density of population is high, then what is the status of the pollution, what types of pollutions are found at a particular place, whether there is air pollution or noise pollution or water pollution, what is the status of pollution and how to reduce the pollution, what are the sources of the pollution, we can use GIS techniques. So, in the current issues, we can use GIS techniques. Then, another very important use of GIS technique, that is the GIS for forest management. We know that one third part of the surface of the earth should be covered by the forest for keeping the environment clean and neat and uh, for the sustainable development of the environment. But due to very rapidly rising population and industrialization and urbanization, these forest resources are depleting. Forest resources becoming less and less. In India today, nearly 11 or 12% area of the total surface area of India is under forest, and these forests are also becoming thin and thin. And therefore, to for the sustainable development of the forest, we can use GIS techniques because GIS gives us up to date maps of the forest, and therefore we can locate in which region the forest resources are becoming less and what efforts we have to take to increase the forest resources. So GIS guides us for the betterment of the forest resources. So that is very important use of GIS. Then GIS also keep us or it also gives information about the land cover, then availability or area available, and what is the human encroachment in the forest. So where human encroachment is taking place in the forest, so to check that, GIS can be wisely used. Then GIS is also used for hazard and risk assessment. So natural disasters and disasters are almost same. So GIS in natural resource management is used in the reduction of natural hazard such as flood, landslide, soil erosion, forest fires, earthquakes, and droughts. So by using uh, GIS and some other techniques and the human efforts, we can certainly reduce the threat of these natural hazards. Certainly, we cannot avoid natural hazards, for example, floods or the droughts or the cyclones. We cannot avoid this, but at least we can reduce the threat, or at least we can reduce the loss of lives and property by using GIS. So, in hazard and risk assessment, GIS can be used. Then, a very important thing uh, in GIS, that is, it detects the changes. Geography is all about the study of locations. It is all about the distribution of different resources. And therefore, to study the location is very important in geography because location gives almost all information about that particular area. Where is the location that determine many things? And therefore, to notice the changes in at a particular place, GIS is used. GIS in natural resource management provides information about the change in the land use, what changes are taking place at particular place with respect to time, that can be automatically recorded and displayed by GIS. And therefore, if we can notice the changes, we can take the precautions. For example, at suppose at a place, suppose the forest resources are depleting. So without wasting time, we can plant trees in that area, and therefore that reduction in the forest resources can be avoided. If the water body is getting polluting due to the disposal of wastewater at particular place, so we can check that wastewater, we can make some treatment on that, and in this way we can uh, avoid the water pollution at that place. So in change detection, GIS is very, very useful. After that, GIS can be used for in natural resource inventory. So uh, resources are quite required for the development, such as land resources or water resources or mineral resources. They are very, very essential for the development process. And therefore, to study or to find out the locations of natural resources or new storages or new reservoirs of natural resources, we can use GIS, because GIS is it can display, it can give us the very correct maps, up to date maps of the Earth surface. And by analyzing that maps, by interpreting that maps, we can find out the natural resources or their storages, and they can be used for the development purposes. Then, this point we have already discussed, that is the environmental monitoring. So GIS in natural resource management monitors different environmental problems and predict their future uh, hazards or the effects also. So in different types of natural disasters such as flood, droughts, or cyclones, or tsunamis, or forest fires, GIS is very useful, and GIS also predict the future conditions of that place. If we interpret the maps by using modern techniques, or if we can take the reference of the stored data, past data, we can predict little bit about the future. And in this way, GIS can be used in the environmental monitoring. Then, in biodiversity application or in biodiversity management, GIS is very useful. As I told earlier, that land or the earth surface is not only for the human being. It is made for all types of species, including plants, animals, birds, microorganisms, and their a symbiotic association that is called as biodiversity. Biodiversity uh, detects the health of the environment. If biodiversity is rich, that certainly means the environment of that place is very good condition. But if biodiversity is getting threatened, so it indicates the uh, bad health of the environment. So biodiversity management is very, very essential, and therefore, in the protection of biological habitats, the protection of forest, in the protection of water resources, we can use GIS techniques, and through that, we can protect the biodiversity on the Earth's surface. So, in this way, in today's lecture, we have taken a brief review of the application of GIS techniques in natural resource management. With the rising pressure on natural resources due to the increasing human population, GIS is used for sustainable use of natural resources. It guides in managing the resources properly and wisely for the present and future generation. So, if we use GIS techniques in natural resource management, we can hand over the natural resources for the future generations also. So, that is the summary of today's lecture. In the next lecture, we'll see what are the application of GIS in regional planning and development. So, with this, stop here.